Hey guys, welcome back. This is Captain Orlando Muniz with Nomad Fishing, and today I'm going to be replacing the saltwater washdown pump on my boat. This is one of the most useful tools that we have at our disposal. It makes life a whole lot easier. Whenever we get blood on the deck or chum or anything like that, we can just take the washdown pump and hose it off. We have two washdown pumps on the boat. We have a freshwater that we use for our faces, our sunglasses, things of that nature. And we also have the salt water or raw water, which we use to hose off the deck. It makes it a lot easier when we get back at the end of a long day. What I'd like to do now is take you through a step-by-step process on how we replace the pump. And hopefully this will save you some time and aggravation the next time you have to do this on your own boat. So stay tuned. Before we get started with the replacement of the pump, I wanted to show you the two different systems we have on my particular boat. This here is the freshwater system. All the water is supplied by this 20 to 25 gallon tank. And there you have the pump, and it's basically a self-contained system. On the freshwater system, the water gets pumped from the tank through this white hose that you see here on the deck, and that's our freshwater system. The second pump that you see here is the pump that we're going to be replacing, which is the saltwater pump. As you can see, there's some corrosion on it. It's actually the pressure switch that usually gives out on these things. We're going to be taking you through a step-by-step. Let me just show you the system real quick here. Here's the pump. You have a hose going in, the hose going out. And then you'll see here in a second, you're going to see the through hull. There's a through hull fitting under the boat. That's where the water comes in. And there's a shut-off valve there that we can shut off if we ever don't want any water coming through. It's obviously closed now for the replacement. So we're going to go ahead and start the process, and then we'll show you how that all works. This inline strainer is also a good idea. It'll catch any debris instead of allowing it to go inside the pump. Before we begin, here are some of the tools we're going to be using today. We have an impact driver that we're going to use to attach the pump to the bulkhead. Also a heat gun to close off or shrink the tubing on the butt connectors. A shear cutter for cutting zip ties. A wire stripper and a crimper. Before we install a new pump, we're going to have to remove the old pump. We're going to start off by undoing this hose here. These are hand tightened, so they come off pretty easily. We're going to undo the two sides, and then we're going to have to basically unattach the pump from the bulkhead and cut the wires going to it. Let's take you through that step here right now. Make sure that valve is closed. Alright, so we have 3 of the screws out. We got 1 more to go. And the pump should be loose and ready to grab and cut our wires. Okay, so now the pump is free. We're just got to go ahead and clip these wires. As you can see, the old connections look pretty clean. We're going to be cutting those and reattaching to the new pump. So here's our new pump. It's a SureFlow Blaster 2, as you can see, 3.5 gallons per minute. We're going to be opening this up. It comes with a nozzle, and it also brings a couple of heat shrink connectors, which we're going to be using. Here's the pump here. There's the nozzle. We don't need the nozzle. We already have a nozzle, but we'll keep that as a spare. We'd probably use it in the future. Also, it comes with some extra connectors, which we're also not going to use since we already have the correct connectors. It's important to note that when you install these pumps, you got to pay close attention to the direction of the water flow. If you look at the housing here, there's an arrow on it, which will tell you the correct way the water should be flowing. If you hook them up backwards, you will not get any flow. Alright, so now we're getting ready to start putting the new pump together. I like to start by attaching my butt connectors to the pump's wires. It's always easier to do these when you're not inside the bilge. So I like to take them here and attach them both using a good quality crimper. My crimper's got a little rust, or some of you might call it character on it, but it's always around the boat and always around saltwater, but they still work very well. The important thing when crimping these butt connectors, you want to crimp hard enough to get a good solid crimp, but you don't want to crimp too hard and cut into the plastic sheathing there. If you cut into it, it makes them virtually useless. Now we're ready to make 2 fresh connections to the existing power. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to undo any tie wraps holding the wire together. Then we're going to clean the wires off, make sure there's no dirt or anything on them. I like to always clip the ends, make sure they're nice and clean and that there's no water or moisture on them. Then we're going to take our wire stripper and cut off about maybe a 1/4 inch off each tip, and that's where we're going to be making our connections. Now, because we're using the duplex wire that comes in white and black, the white is going to go into the positive, and the black is always going to be our negative. That's the constant. After heating up these heat shrink butt connectors, I'm going to let them cool off for a couple minutes before I start moving the wires around. So at this point, the pump is wired and it's ready to hook up. We're going to start by getting all these wires behind the pump where they're not being pinched or hindered in any way. Then we're going to take our drill and we're going to try to reuse the same holes that were already there on the bulkhead. I'm going to try to line them up here, and it's probably a very small space for the drill, so I'm going to start by using just a long Phillips screwdriver. It gives me a little bit better feel, and then I can find the old openings and attach it right there. So now that the pump is secured to the bulkhead, we can go ahead and connect our hoses, which doesn't take very long at all. Now, before attaching all of the wires and using tie wraps to make all the wires nice and neat in the bilge, I like to run the pump first and make sure that everything is perfect before I go through the trouble of tie wrapping and organizing everything. If there is a problem, you want to find it at this point and not after you've done all that extra work. Alright, so now it's time to find our switch. Let's go ahead and power up the pump. See if we can hear it turn on. I think I hear it turn on here. Let's take our hose and let her rip. Looks like we got pretty good pressure. It's not uncommon to have air trapped in the line, so it may take a while before you get full pressure. It helps if you stop and start it a couple times. Eventually the air will get purged out and you'll get a nice steady stream like we're getting here. One thing is for sure, it's going to make our next fishing trip a lot more pleasurable when we get back to the dock and we don't have any dry blood or chum on the deck. The last step in the process is to button everything up. So we're going to take a few tie wraps and we're going to basically take all our wires and organize them using the tie wraps. One of the things you want to do is